If someone's a combat pragmatist, that is, someone who takes every advantage they can get in a fight, then they don't really believe there's such a thing as dirty fighting or cheap shots. Whether you agree with this or not, an unexpected or underhanded attack can be absolutely devastating in a battle, and it happens more than you'd expect in anime. Just take a look at these examples from some of the cheapest and dirtiest fights in all of anime. We just had to start off with one of the craziest examples of a below-the-belt blow in all of anime, the infamous groin punch of One Punch Man. This painful punch came as a result of Saitama's battle against the super-fast ninja Speedo Sound Sonic, who was all too, pardon the pun, quick to show off how fast he was. In true shonen villain fashion, this is a parody series after all, Sonic sped around the battlefield while explaining who he was and gloating about how he was the fastest person in all the world. Of course, his gloating was cut short when Saitama looked directly at him, showing he was able to keep up with the villain's so-called unmatched speed. Following this, Saitama placed his fist upward as a means of showing he could keep up, not intending to actually punch Sonic, but unfortunately, the villain's momentum caused his groin to make contact with Saitama's fist. Even if it was unintentional, this attack could easily be considered a cheap shot, since Saitama still aimed his fist between Sonic's legs, and there's no way he didn't know what he was doing, since he's way faster. It's a darn shame how many people forget just how powerful Android 18 is. While her power level might not be as high as Goku or Vegeta by the time of the Buu Saga, she has a limitless supply of it. This is pretty much exactly what happened when Android 18 faced off against Vegeta. While they were equally matched in terms of strength, Android 18 just didn't run out of gas, going strong while Vegeta was running on fumes. Although most of the battle seemed evenly matched, Vegeta started to slow down halfway through, making him an easy target for the infinite energy of Android 18. In other words, the tide of the battle had turned, and Android 18 was straight up beating up Vegeta, eventually leaving him battered, bruised, drained, and basically down for the count. This is to say that there was no reason for Android 18 to continue the fight, since Vegeta was practically finished. Yet she still went in for the cheap shot, giving the Saiyan Prince a powerful kick to the arm, breaking it and twisting it in a way that almost made us look away from the sheer brutality. If you're a fan of superhero anime like One Punch Man or My Hero Academia, then you definitely need to check out Tiger and Bunny, an anime series that follows a buddy cop-esque hero duo competing on a superhero reality show as they fight crime in a massive, super-powered, villain-filled city. It's a pretty neat premise with an even cooler anti-hero, Lunatic. While this character didn't end up being a major part of the series, he's still an excellent example of going for a cheap shot. How so? Well, the character's whole shtick was killing killers, giving them the punishment they deserve for taking a life. Sounds like your typical anti-hero, right? Well, the reason Lunatic made it into this video was because his justice would usually come as a criminal was being arrested, or when they were otherwise incapacitated. There's a reason he's thought of as a dark hero, folks. He rids the world of criminals, but he does so with cheap shots, hitting them from afar or when his target can't fight back. Shape-shifting is always tricky business, especially when the shapeshifter knows just how to manipulate people, like Envy from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. One of the character's most devastatingly atrocious acts, aside from, starting a war that resulted in mass genocide, was killing everyone's favorite quirky dad, Colonel Hughes, while wearing the face of his beloved wife. Hughes was targeted shortly after he found out what was truly going on with Amestris, and Envy was the one who dealt the final blow, doing so while shape-shifting into his wife. This is a classic shapeshifter move, preying on the weakness of a person by transforming into their loved ones as a means of stopping them in their tracks. This was the ultimate cheap shot, since tugging at heartstrings in a fight is just plain dirty, but that didn't stop Envy. The homunculus just loves to mess with people's emotions, doing the same later on when facing Colonel Mustang by turning into Hughes. It's been made fun of, used as fodder to argue for the character's weakness and memeified countless times, but we still don't think people have truly thought about Yamcha's death in Dragon Ball Z. What exactly do we mean by this? Well, think back to the fight that led to his untimely demise. Yamcha did incredibly well against the Cybermen that attacked him. In fact, he bested the little gremlin, overpowering it so much that it was forced to make itself useful to Nappa and Vegeta by latching itself onto Yamcha and self-destructing. This is to say that Yamcha's death by Cybermen wasn't a sign of the character's weakness. This moment was one of the cheapest, dirtiest attacks in all of anime, standing as possibly the cheapest in all of Dragon Ball. Fullmetal Panic juggles romance, comedy, military action, and mecha battles, all of which seem like they shouldn't work together, but the series manages to do it incredibly well. The first, third, and fourth seasons of the series all share this amazing balance of genres, while the second season was a comedy-focused slice-of-life series focusing on Sosuke Sagada, the undercover operative protecting high schooler Kaname Chidori. This series was full of Sosuke going way overboard with the day-to-day challenges of life, often approaching these challenges with assault weapons and guerrilla war tactics. Case in point, when the soldier faced off against the karate club in order to get them to leave their dojo, he didn't understand that martial arts was meant to be performed with just his bare hands. He used a freaking gun against the first opponent, gas against his second, and a grenade as a distraction against the third opponent, going for the groin to finish him off. All three of these are the definition of cheap shots, but Sosuke doesn't really seem to get that. Okay, so you know how in anime, whenever someone's transforming from one form to another, nobody ever really attacks during that long sequence where the transforming character seems to be completely vulnerable? What's up with that? Well, we might not ever get an answer. Dragon Ball Super actually parodied this idea, specifically with the magical girl transformation of the character Ribrianne, a warrior from Universe 2 who took way too long to turn into her magical form. In fact, she was taking so long that Android 17 decided to up and attack her while she was transforming, taking the opportunity to get a cheap shot in. Of course, he was quickly chided for this both by Ribrianne and her universe, as well as his own teammates. A few of them, specifically Goku, actually wanted to see how much stronger the magical girl parody would get once she transformed fully. Now, we don't blame Android 17 for not understanding the etiquette of magical girl transformations, but we thought he was a good guy at this point. Why would he go for such a cheap shot? For shame, Android 17. For shame. Dragon Ball is full of cheap shots and dirty fighting, and even the series' main protagonist isn't immune to resorting to last-ditch efforts, and arguably underhanded techniques to get out of tough situations. Case in point, Goku's signature move of desperation is biting his opponents to free himself from their grasp. There are so many examples of Goku doing this, dating all the way back to his fight against the Demon King Piccolo, in which he bit the Demon King's hand when all of his other options had been exhausted. Fast forward to Dragon Ball Z, and Goku used the same tactic against Frieza, biting the villain's tail in order to escape its grip around him. Goku also bit Boo and vice versa during his final battle of the series, with both Goku and Boo fighting dirty and taking cheap shots as they struggled for dominance. Goku and Beerus both got into some cheap and really dumb fighting techniques during their battle as they bit each other, yelled into each other's ears, and just straight up acted like children. This trend continued as Goku got another bite of Frieza's tail in the Golden Frieza Saga, chomped into Whis while training, and sunk his teeth into Broly in Dragon Ball Super Broly. Usually in stories where a character appears to be cheap, underhanded, and willing to do whatever it takes for a payday, they have a heart of gold under their ruthless exterior. But that's not the case in Desert Punk, a post-apocalyptic series following the exploits of desert mercenaries. Pretty much each and every one of these characters, especially titular mercenary Desert Punk, are lying, cheating, betraying jerks who take literally every cheap shot they can, trying to get the jump on others even if they're working together on a job. If they're not screwing each other over, they're probably planning on it, lying, tricking one another into falling for traps so they can claim all the earnings for themselves. One specific example came in the episode where Junko asks Desert Punk to help her find a treasure for a client, only to betray both of them in the end in order to get the treasure for herself. So no, there's no heart of gold underneath Desert Punk's cheap shot-taken outer shell, nor is there a kind person beneath the trickery of Junko or the arrogant Rain Spider. They're just terrible people who poke at weaknesses, fight as dirty as possible, and take every single cheap shot they can to earn an easy buck. While Goku resorted to biting in his fight against Frieza, the villain isn't any less of a dirty fighter himself, as seen in his fight against Vegeta. Frieza completely dominated the arrogant Saiyan, who thought of himself as a Super Saiyan after his recent power-ups. However, this was nothing compared to Frieza's power, which the villain used to annihilate Vegeta, eventually killing him without mercy. However, before the final blow was dealt, Frieza played with his victim like a cat playing with a mouse before eating it. He tortured Vegeta, and what's torture if it's not kicking someone when they're down and going for all the most vulnerable and painful spots? Which is exactly what Frieza did with Vegeta. Vegeta was literally helpless, unable to fight back after Frieza had proven he was the stronger fighter, yet Frieza didn't let up, strangling Vegeta with his tail, grabbing the Saiyan by the hair, punching him in the back, and taking every kind of cheap shot you could imagine. We knew Frieza was a ruthless, dirty fighter before this, but his torturing of Vegeta really sold the idea that he loved to hurt others, especially when it came to taking cheap shots at his opponents. Without a doubt, this entry is perhaps the most literal cheap shot in the entire video, since, they're actual shots. Of course, we're talking about caster shells from Outlaw Star. These bizarre bullets are the go-to weapon of Gene Starwind and are essentially the poor man's spells, since they shoot magic without the user having to actually know how to use magic. It's a pretty cool concept that has some badass visuals, and a really cool name. But when you think about it, caster shells are the ultimate cheap shot. Both against magical and non-magical opponents, being able to shoot a spell directly at someone is a pretty dirty, underhanded, and rather barbaric way of fighting. Seriously, it probably takes years to master spells, and Gene's just there shooting them off like a back alley wizard. Again, don't get us wrong. This idea, the design of the gun, the visuals of the caster shells, and pretty much everything that went into the concept of the weapon are freaking badass. But you can't deny that it's a very cheap way to fight. It made Gene's caster gun, the caster shells, and all the times he's used them some of the cheapest shots in all of anime. Another literal cheap shot, by which we mean someone literally shot someone, came from Dragon Ball Super. Specifically the Golden Frieza saga, as well as the film it adapted its story from. This moment is somewhat infamous for making Goku look insanely weak, since he just straight up couldn't handle a laser shot, nearly dying from a single blast. Some have theorized that this is because energy levels increase durability, and when someone's drained of energy, their defenses are weakened, but that's besides the point. The point is that Sorbet took advantage of Goku's drained state and shot him with a laser from afar, like a little coward. Seriously, even Frieza was mad about how cheap of a shot it was, since he wasn't satisfied with having to kill Goku at his weakest. But that didn't stop him from doing it, since he went on to stomp on Goku's laser wound and bring the Saiyan close to death. Both Sorbet and Frieza took some of the cheapest, dirtiest, underhanded, and downright unfair shots at Goku, shooting him from afar and torturing him like a bunch of cheap jerks. Then again, they are villains, so it's not like this kind of thing wasn't expected. Envy's shape-shifting trickery wasn't the only notable cheap shot from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, since another example comes from Ed's fight against Lanfan. While this example of an anime cheap shot is much less darker and much more comedic than a shapeshifter killing a man while wearing the face of his wife, there's still no denying how underhanded it was. And we mean that literally, since Ed, after a lot of back and forth fighting between him and Lanfan, removed his own automail arm to use as bait for the warrior. See, underhanded? Whatever. This tactic was clever and effective, but you can't deny it was pretty cheap at the same time. Ed made it look like he'd been buried by a pile of rubble, only for his automail arm to be revealed as the spring for a trap, leading Lanfan to be tied up and hoisted into the air by a claw-like contraption. Ed claimed this idea came from learning how to trap rabbits as a kid, which we're not sure what to make of. Does it make the tactic any less underhanded or cheap? Or does it make it worse since he used it on rabbits? My Hero Academia does a good job of balancing its characters out. By this, we mean that while the main character loves superheroes and wants to be one, not everyone shares the same sentiment, making for a much more diverse, realistic world. Case in point, the character Kota, a young boy who lost his hero parents to a villain attack, hates heroes, blaming the hero life for taking his parents from him. This hatred of heroes was made very apparent when Kota and Deku first meet. Izuku politely introduced himself, stating he was a student training to be a hero, a fact that Kota immediately reacted to by punching Deku right in the family jewels. It was immediately followed up by Tenya claiming this kind of treatment of someone's junk was unforgivable. Do we even have to state how much of a cheap shot this is? After all, we opened the video with the most extreme case of it. Seriously, there is no way Midoriya was expecting such a punch from what appeared to be an innocent little kid. Especially not when he was introducing himself so politely. Tenya's right, Kota is a fiend of a child. Luckily, this didn't stop Deku from saving the little rascal later on. Last and certainly not least, we have the cheapest attack in the entirety of Dragon Ball, and possibly all of anime, the Solar Flare. Don't get us wrong, Solar Flare is a very useful attack, and has come in handy more times than we can count, but that doesn't make it any less cheap. Seriously, the Solar Flare is like the super-powered version of throwing dirt in someone's eyes. Just a big, flashy distraction that gives whoever's using it an opportunity to attack or run away without the chance of retaliation. Again, it's useful, but there's no denying that it's a cheap move, especially since both villains and characters who've been outmatched have used it, making it the go-to attack of anyone who has no idea what to do in a tough situation. So many characters have utilized this attack, from Tien, who was the first to use it, to Krillin, and even Cell, all of whom used it to get the edge in a battle. Long story short, while it's one of the most useful attacks in the Dragon Ball franchise, the Solar Flare is one of the cheapest shots in anime, every instance of it being used making the user look like an underhanded, dirty little cheat. So, there you have it, our picks for the cheapest shots and dirtiest fights in anime. Do you agree with our choices? Did we leave anything out? Were these cheap attacks actually fair? Let us know down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more anime videos. Thanks for watching.